So the next, I don't know, speaker, the next speaker is Ibu Nelly. Ibu Nelly, many of your research focus on women, especially on Muslim women in Indonesia, but also on interreligious relations. You are also the editor of a journal called Interreligious Studies, which bears the same name as our PhD program. So the question is, how do you see research on Muslim women in Indonesia? I think it has been also asked or mentioned very briefly by Pak Bob. I mean, like, if you would like to touch on this issue. And also, do you see some kind of Indonesian characteristic in interreligious studies? How gender issue features here? So it's a lot of questions in 7 minutes. I apologize, I will remind you when the time is like left for 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this working? Okay, I have to put it real close. Well, thank you all for coming here tonight, and it is already 7 o'clock and dark outside, and I very much admire you to be here, because some of you, I think, are still working on their paper for the AAS that starts tomorrow. At least I also still am doing that. Well, I actually would like to start with something else, because I did not realize that tonight we were going to launch the Indonesian side of the study in interreligious dialogue. And maybe some of you know, I work in the United States, but I am Dutch. And so I was raised in this dry and educated in this very dry, unimaginative Dutch system. I can say that, I'm Dutch myself. And I was not there actually when Studies in Interreligious Dialogue was launched, but I do remember the controversy, because it was launched at the Vrije Universiteit, the Free University, which was a university was set up to be teaching the, you know, Dutch are reformed. Everybody knows that, right? It was set up to teach the reformed version of the Protestant interpretation of Christianity. And somehow, when the Studies in Interreligious Dialogue started, it was considered a revolution. And what was the reason to start it? And this is what brings me back to Indonesia, were the PhD students. The Dutch, there were a lot of PhD students from Africa, from different countries in Asia, and especially also from Indonesia, and there still are a lot of PhD students doing all kinds of, not so much religious studies topics, but also, you know, theology, anthropology, and so on in the Netherlands. And they did not have a platform for their work. And that is why it was started, and it was a big uproar in the Netherlands that the idea was they are going to drift away from the true reformed, gereformeerd vision of Christianity, and now they're going to, you know, become kind of a mix of different religions, and we don't know where this is going to end. Well, today we know where it's going to end, because it has started again. And that, I think, is really something we should celebrate. But at the same time, what happened was, with Studies in Interreligious Dialogue, we launched a second one, and that is the one you just mentioned, which we call ICIT, because we felt that somehow the journals were too much, what you call it, isolated per continent. Like you had, for example, scholars in Europe publishing in European journals, and we hear the result is disastrous. You told us, Pazijn, that there were no longer young scholars who were interested in publishing in the journal. And also there was very little connection between Europe and the States. You know, we have the American Academy of Religion, very expensive to visit, not many people can make it. People try, but it's very hard. And so we felt we need a journal that connects the different continents. And so we try to reach out to people both in America, in Europe, but also then in Indonesia. We have actually lots of submissions from Indonesia, Africa, and so on, because we said we actually are now at a point where this whole debate on interreligious dialogue and the study of religion and how to study religion, and for example, studying gender and religion, we are at a point that this should no longer come from one place. It should be connected. And as we already heard from Pa Hefner, I don't know about you, but I just want him to give a talk all night, and then I love to listen, but that is just me. You know, the thing is that the debates are so different everywhere. And the points of departure and the theoretical frameworks and the methodologies, they're so different. And I think the study of religion right now is at a point where we are starting to really learn from each other. And Indonesia has a very important position in that process. Because as Indonesian students, like we here, study all these languages on these different islands and in different groups, they really come up with amazing topics and very interesting. And what is so interesting, it's not just the topics, but also that it often has to do with their immediate environment. And I think that has been also missing. We know all the wonderful work by Gadjah, you mentioned him, and we are all reading Anthropologists of Religion. But at the same time, what we learned from the Indonesian contributions is to do the field work, the emic, the ethic, you're looking at your own culture, at your own community, and trying to understand that. And how do you do that? And that, in a way, holds up a huge mirror to us in the West. Because in the West, we love to go out and study others. And whether others are, for example, in my case, others are extreme evangelicals who belong to the Mada movement. We are completely puzzled by them. But at the same time, what we are doing is just as puzzling for others. And I think that is something that is really the big contribution that we are getting from Indonesia. That you are leading the way and showing us how do you study your own communities. Or how do you even go, I think about Pak Anshu, who studies the indigenous groups, right? How do you do that? How do you connect with them? What is it that matters? And why do they matter to us? Why do they matter to Indonesia? Why do they matter to all of us? And how do we read that? And I think that is the new level that we are at. And of course, CRCS and ICRS have been amazing contributions to this development. And of course, actually, Bu Fatima asked us to prepare 5 to 7 minutes. So the first thing I did is look up how many similar institutions do we have in Indonesia, and we all know none, right? We don't have very many platforms that are, so to speak, neutral, where people can study religion together from different perspectives. We have, of course, the confessional schools. We have the Islamic universities. We have the Christian STT, the seminaries, where religion is being studied. But that is also quite new. When I came to Indonesia in the 1990s, I was asked to teach Islamic studies at Wacana University. Of course, my first question was, you have millions of Muslims. Why don't you ask one of them? But the answer was, because we want someone who is also an outsider and who is, and actually teaches us more in, connects us with the literature from the West and with the ways of thinking, how research in this topic is being done, and then connects. And I think this is one of the connections that came out of that, right? Duta Wacana and UGM and UI are now CRCS. But the thing is this, that when you asked us about future of study of religion, I personally wrote down here, the future has only just begun. it is beginning because I think CRCS should not stay unique. We need more institutions like this. And now I come to the women's studies. Okay, 1 minute left. I have been studying Kupi, reading the room. Who of you has heard of Kupi? Oh, I'm always, yeah, thank God I see a few hands, because I'm always a shock when I speak to an Indonesian audience and I have not heard of the Congress Ulama Perempuan Indonesia, the Congress for Women Ulama in Indonesia. And that this was a huge event. We had to have 2 events. It's become a movement. But what strikes me when I speak to the Kupi leaders, they all started with the PSW in their Islamic university, the Pusat Studi Wanita. They all said, yeah, I took a course and my professor said, you should read more from the Pusat Studi Wanita, and that is what opened my eyes. And that is what made me study my own religion, and that is what made me think about what is possible in our own context, in our own framework. So in many ways, you know, my point for the 7 minutes I was allowed was we really need to start thinking, or you need to start thinking, not we, you, about how to get more CRCSs on the map. Because there is something going on, and I now speak as someone who teaches in America. And I have to always do a class, Intro to Islamic Studies, which could be utterly boring for me, but I have the greatest joy doing it, because there's always so much going on. In front of me are, half of my class is extremely convinced atheists, the other half are extremely convinced evangelicals. There is nothing in between at Wake Forest University, which is in the south of America, right? We are in the south. And they have to take a class in religion, and they take my class for some reason, because I have convinced them that it's useful if you go into business or into medicine, it's useful to know something about Islam. And they all come out of my class really somehow with a different mindset about Islam. They never thought about things. They read the news. We know the news. It can be very biased. They have never thought about what do people actually believe, what do they do, and so on and so on. And that is how I want to say we need more institutions like JRCS, so that people can, that students in all levels across Indonesia can get in touch with these ways of thinking and be inspired for wherever they go in their lives. And now I must stop, otherwise I'm in trouble.
Thank you very much, Ibu Nelly. Pak Zainal and Mas Anco have given me a very difficult task to stop everyone speaking after 10 minutes. So I'm so sorry. I think we all enjoy all the pointers and all the reflections very much. And just one quick note before I move to Ibu Lena Larsson, that I don't know, but some people think that if, we have students who study their own community, their own pesantren even, we thought that, you should actually broaden your mind and do research to, doing something else. But yeah, I think it's important, it's interesting that Bu Nelly think that it is actually probably one of a very good, it's more a strength rather than a weaknesses. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like a lari marathon, yeah.